Today I'm going to talk about a fountain pen, but first I'd like to address one issue. A couple of you asked me whether or not I am on the fountain pen network. Well, the answer is yes, I am. You can find me there. My screen name is Stephen Brown, without any spaces. It took me a while to post something there, but I've now formally introduced myself, so that is one way to contact me, and of course I'll try to post stuff on the forum. Okay, the pen. The pen I'll talk about today is the Pilot 78G. That's a fairly cheap fountain pen, but a nice one. I like it. I had to go through some trouble to get one. A lot of sites that offer them, for some reason, these pens are now out of stock nearly everywhere. And I read that Pilot has stopped or will stop producing them. I'm not sure whether that is true, but if you want to get one of these pens and you can find one, I wouldn't wait too long. Okay. So I finally found a site that offered the pen, and then it turned out that the shipping costs to where I live were about 3 times the total value of the pen. So I thought, well, maybe I should skip on this one. But someone was kind enough she was from the US, and she was kind enough to offer me to buy the pen for me, then ship it to me, and I just paid her the total amount she expended. And that worked really well, and the shipping costs were a lot more reasonable. So I'm not going to give you her name because I don't want her to be swamped with requests to, do this for people. But in any case, you know who you are. Thanks a lot. Really helpful. Okay. The pen. The pen comes in a very simple cardboard box. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's not that expensive a pen. It's a nice box. It's cardboard. You open it by sliding out one bit. Then you get the standard instructions from Pilot, how to fill the pen, with a bottle of ink, etc. And of course you have the real pen. They come in a number of colors. I got the green one because I really wanted to have the broad nib, and this was I think this was pretty much the only color with the broad nib that was still in stock. Okay, now, the first thing I'd like to point out is my confusion over the converter. This is the converter. I got another one. It actually compresses. This is like a classic type of converter with a sack, which is kind of nice. Now, I figured out how to use that. That's not the problem. But I opened the box. I saw the converter, and I thought, what? Are they kidding? And the reason for that is that a while ago I bought a Pilot Parallel, which looks like this. You may know it. I have a video on this on how to convert it to eyedropper. It's a calligraphy pen, and it came with the exact same converter. Now you may think, yeah, so what? To sort of quote Arnold Schwarzenegger. But what's the issue? They're both Pilot pens, right? So what's the problem? Well, with the Parallel, you actually get an instruction sheet that tells you not to use this converter to fill up the pen with ink, but to only use it with water to flush out the pen. And then with the 78G, you get the exact same converter, but you're supposed to use it with ink. What? So I sent an email to Brian Goulet of the Goulet Pen Company, who is like my main pen guru, and I said something like, ¿Qué pasa, amigo? And he said, yeah, well, that is kind of weird. He thinks it has something to do with the fact that the Parallel has a very long barrel, and perhaps if you put in the converter, it may get dislodged somehow, because there's not, of course, a lot of... actually, there's too much space here to really keep it in place. I'm not sure whether that is the reason not to use the converter, but it seems to make sense to me. So it's weird. I think I'm just gonna... I now have this converter to eyedropper. I'm gonna empty it out, and then I'm gonna use this converter, and I'm gonna see what happens. If the pen explodes, then you won't see any more new videos from me, and you know that it wasn't a good thing to do, but I think I'm going to be safe. Okay, the pen we're going to talk about today. Pilot 78G, nice pen, cheap pen, but a nice pen. So this is the green one. Let's cover the different parts of the pen. We have the cap. It's plastic. This is not resin. It's simple plastic pen. I do like it. It's an interesting shade of green. You get these gold highlights, which are not real gold, I'm sure, but they do look nice. You get the gold clip. The cap is screw-on, which I really like. I don't really like the caps you just pull off, because then you got it in your shirt pocket or in your pen pouch, you pull it off and you just hold the cap. That happened to me quite a lot. So you can unscrew the cap and then you see the broad nib. Now, I'm sure my camera won't pick this up very well, but what you guys may notice is that this is not a regular broad nib. This is actually an italic. It's flat, so it doesn't have the regular rounding off of a fountain pen nib, but it's just cut off straight like that. This will become a lot clearer if I give you a writing sample in a minute, so bear with me. I have no idea what the nib material is. It's definitely not solid gold, and I doubt whether it is gold plated. In any case, it is smooth. It's a nice nib. Because it is an italic, it can be a little scratchy under specific angles, but it's not bad. And let's keep in mind, this is a $12 pen, right? So there we have that. The grip section is nice. It is slightly tapered here, and then it gets wider again, so that gives you a nice way to hold it. Your fingers won't slip, even though it is just smooth plastic. There is no texture, but still. Something I really like is that these threads to keep the cap in place are not very sharp. I have some pens in which these threads are really sharp, and when you hold it, they sort of cut into your fingers. May be a bit exaggerated, but you really feel the sharp edge, which you don't feel with this pen, so that's nice. The size of the pen is not that bad. Actually, I post it also because the pen is very light. It is all plastic, so that's what you get. But if you post it, you have a really nice, decently sized pen. So that's good. The pen comes with this converter. I've already talked about that. So this is an all squeeze type converter, which means you just put the pen in a bottle of ink and you squeeze it. I'm not going to do that right now because it's inked up, but I'll just use the empty converter. So you just squeeze it a couple of times, and then you will push out air and ink will be sucked into the pen, and that works well. Don't expect this cartridge to hold, this converter to hold a huge amount of ink. I emptied this pen in a day. So a day of normal writing and all the ink is gone. That's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just something I'd like to point out. Okay, so that screws back in place. Now, I have the feeling it might be interesting to try and convert this to an eyedropper too, because this is all plastic. There are no metal bits inside. It is, one solid bit of plastic. There are no different parts or rings on there or whatever. And the same thing goes for this, for the section. There is no metal in there as far as I can see. So I might try to convert this to an eyedropper, put some silicone grease on the threads here. You see there is this nice wide extra plastic thing that might serve as a good buffer, and the threads actually end a bit, how am I going to explain that? The end a bit, there's a little opening here, let's put it that way, a little opening, a space between the actual grip and the last end of the section. So you could easily put a rubber O-ring in there. So I'm going to try that someday, and maybe I'll let you know whether or not that worked out. So, for $12 you get an interesting pen that doesn't feel too cheap, that looks fairly classy. You get some nice gold colored highlights. It actually says Pilot on the clip, should you ever forget it. And of course the most amazing thing is this italic nib. I expected to get a simple, regular broad nib. I got the feeling the the fine and the medium nibs actually are more regular fountain pen nibs, so rounded nibs, but only the broad is an italic. Interesting. I'll show you what the pen, how it writes, and that's it. So I hope this was useful, and I'll see you later. Bye bye. Okay, writing with the Pilot 78G. The ink here is Iroshizuku Momiji, a Japanese ink. I thought that would make sense in a Japanese pen. .78G, the nib is broad, and the ink I've just shown you. Okay, so the first thing to notice is that this is not so much a regular broad nib as an italic, a stub, which you can see by the line variation. You see, these are very fine lines, and these are much broader. So that can give you some interesting line variation when you write, which is something you will not get from an ordinary broad nib. Okay, so now that we have that, let's do a simple writing sample. Writing is fairly smooth. I think, as you can see, there are no balls of iridium welded to this nib, so it's really flat, like a calligraphy nib. I've already said that. But that can make the nib a little scratchy under specific circumstances. So if I move up like this, you hear that? Then there is some scratch. I didn't align the pen very well. That's not entirely fair. But even so, there can be a little scratch. But on good paper, and this is Leuchtturm, a Leuchtturm 1917 notebook, that's fairly smooth paper, it's not really an issue. But then again, of course, you have to realize this is a $12 pen, so it could be a little scratchier than an 18-karat nib. If I compare this with the 18-karat nib on my Amass 360, then this one is a lot smoother. But that's not a fair comparison. So, okay. Flexibility. I apply more and more pressure, and as you can see, there is some variation. But of course, what you should keep in mind is that you already get line variation because of the shape of the nib, right? As I've just shown you, it is an italic, so it will give you line variation anyway, so the pressure doesn't really enter into it, and flexibility is not a big issue. Nevertheless, there is some flexibility, as you can see. This line is a bit wider than that one. Okay, let's do some fast writing. I'm not going to be legible, I'm just going to be fast to show you whether the feed keeps up or not. So that was very fast, and as you can see, there is no skipping whatsoever. So I like that. That means you can take quick notes with this pen. That's a good sign. Okay, so I've shown you the pen. I hope this was useful. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.